right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Malevolent Autopsy. This is a show hosted by patrons featuring patron content recorded live in the Invictus Discord as Malevolent is in its 5th season. The show is chock full of spoilers since every episode is meant to comment on a recent update. So if you will want to avoid spoilers for all of Malevolent as it's been released to chapter 237 or part 48, check out now and come back next time. Our episodes are archived in the Discord before they're released to the public, so you can always listen later. I'm Queen, my pronouns are she, her, and tonight I control Arthur's left lung.
Hi, my name is PinchofPeppers, short, just Peppers, pronouns she, her, and today I'm controlling his brain because I'm just coming off from a headache, and if I could just slowly massage my own brain, that'd be great.
I'm so sorry about your headache, my friend.
It's okay. If I could give my headache to Arthur Lester, I feel like he deserves it.
He does.
That's actually not true. I don't think he deserves it, but I do think not
That's
only is he
because
God's little chew toy, he's my little chew toy. So I'd like to give him that.
Okay, that's fair. I get that.
Yeah.
All right, so this time everybody is going to be subjected to me reading a summary. However, I have cheated. I had a ghostwriter write this summary. But I did not have time. Peppers did not have time. So actually, this summary is brought to you by Volume Control in the chat, my best friend.
Shout out. The point of a ghostwriter is you don't share it.
Because I wasn't gonna, and then I felt really bad because I've never done that before, so I felt terrible. So actually, he likes to be a ghost. We'll just say that. All right, so our summary for chapter 237. Arthur decides to speak to Barnabas, and he seems to believe they're unlikely to all get out of this alive. He shares that he's overheard their host above them and believes that Lord Everard knows them all well, and like all of them, is seeking answers. He insists that Warren is like them too, that he's seen the cracks. Friar Holbrook interjects and accuses Barnabas of making assumptions, but Barnabas fires back that the friar claimed to have found his answers, which he denies. Finally, their host arrives with the blindfolded woman in tow, whom he introduces as Aaliyah Shaw. He goes around the room describing each of the men's specialties and tells them that he has found the answer to all they seek, the Black Stone. He says he will not give it over to the order, of which Langward is a member, but that all of them gathered here deserve to witness its power and receive its gifts. He then invites Barnabas to join him privately in the study and sends Warren to his room. Langward storms off with Gerard hurrying after him. John then questions whether it's wise to still give Lord Everard the ring from the order they had intended to give as a gift, or better to keep it as it may reflect poorly on him.
Yeah. So first of all, Barnabas is a real one. I love that guy, and I also feel like he's probably gonna die. And I'll be real sad. Yeah, Barnabas is a real one. I remember when I was listening to this episode, I actually messaged you, Queen, that we maybe should have spoken with Langward because Langward specializes in diseases, and I'm like, oh, he could have maybe uncovered what Arthur has, and maybe we could find a little cure. But we did not do that. So,
well, it's interesting that you say that because I was like, no, we weren't supposed to do that. And I don't know. I feel like, yes, we probably wouldn't have been rewarded as much if we had talked to Langward because not only because some patrons enjoy input from Harlan and Joe when it comes to the polls. If you don't know, if you're listening and you're new, sometimes they like to weigh in, stir the pot, or just give their thoughts or just make jokes and stuff. But because Harlan creates the show, sometimes people are heavily swayed by anything he says. Even if it's just a joke, they'll start basing their whole vote around what Harlan said. And sometimes people would prefer not to be influenced that way. They want to just have a really pure game experience where they're not given any hints or clues, or they don't have to consider what's being said by somebody who's making the show. So kind of two different ways to experience the podcast. as I recall from stories beyond, it used to happen more often. But occasionally, Harlan or Joe will answer our questions or give some input or thoughts, or ask us questions like, how are we feeling about the vote and what do we think? And so we try to keep those two experiences separate. There's a whole separate channel in the Discord for if you like that experience. If you don't like that experience, you can choose just not to look at it. You can mute it, and nobody is required to look at it. And everything that stays in that channel is meant to be there like permanently through the vote. You're not really supposed to bring over those arguments. So there's two separate experiences going on, and I think now that the vote is pretty much cast, I don't know that it's going to make a difference, but I won't reveal anything specific said there. But I do want to mention there was a conversation that took place in that channel, and I do think it influenced some people in how they viewed who would be the best choice. Definitely influenced my vote as far as who we voted for. And I do understand that Langward was a really appealing option. I was vying for Langward really hard at the beginning. I do understand why it probably wouldn't have been the most satisfying as a person trying to pull information out. Langward was supposed to come off as very off-putting on purpose, I think, where he just didn't want to engage with people, didn't want to talk to people. And I totally get that. But when folks were listening to the episode after we had chosen Barnabas, and you messaged me that, I was like, what? Like, I didn't feel that way at all. I felt like we made a really good choice, but I don't know. That's kind of the big thing with Malevolent, is that once you make your choice, you kind of have to sit with it, and you never get to know what would have happened if you'd picked anything else. Because now I'm dying to know what would have happened if we had spoken to the Friar, which I didn't care about at all when we were voting, but now I really want to know.
Yeah, I mean, there's a compelling argument for, I think, all of them. Ultimately, I'm still glad that we got to chat with Barnabas because he's my god. He's my dude. Barnabas is to me as Noel is to Queen. I feel like that's my guy. And if he gets more belligerent and angry as thing goes on, I'm gonna be even more happy. He's literally my guy. So this is a threat. If a certain someone makes him die, I got nothing.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
You know what? I won't draw him. That's my threat. I won't be able to follow it, but that's my threat.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So first of all, Noel mentioned at the chat, everyone. I'm very sad about Noel. Everyone's always very sad about Noel. Second of all, I think Barnabas turned out to be entertaining at bare minimum, if nothing else. But I think we got some pretty heavy information. Now, granted, it was information we probably could have guessed in about 2 seconds after he walked into the room anyway. I don't know. It was fun. I like him. I wish he hadn't burped in my ear, but I guess.
Nah, he's a real one. I love him, and I would die for him.
Okay, but you know that he's probably gonna die.
It's like a 85% chance at least that he's gonna die.
Well, I think it's still a pretty solid 85% chance that all of them are gonna die. I think we talked about who we think is gonna die first. I still think it's Horbrook first.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you know why I think who is the guy who has connections to the cult?
Langward.
Langward, yeah, Langward. I think he's gonna be the longest to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
People in cults are pretty good at surviving, as I'm told.
yeah. I just feel like he has the most connection to everything. So either one of two things. He's either gonna die the first or the last. I don't know. That's my hypothesis.
Rebecca says, "Who has connections to the cult? Do you have any idea how little that narrows it down?" Roses of
You
Envy says, "It can't get involved if you don't talk to anybody." Aspen says, "I'm thinking maybe the king isn't alive. I don't know why, but I have a deep feeling in my bones." That's interesting because I do want to address that guard with the spooky, sewn shut mouth. Lord Everard probably did that, or knows who did that in some
Mhm.
way. I don't know, like some weird shit's going on under his watch. Why does he have the Blackstone? Where did he come from? Who is he?
Why is everybody's mouth sewn shut, and why is the witch blind? And the witch, her mouth is there something wrong with her mouth as well? I totally forgot. All I
Oh,
remember
she
is the
just doesn't
blindfold.
speak.
Oh, okay. She
No,
just
she
yeah.
I mean, we don't know there's nothing wrong with her mouth, but yeah, she just doesn't speak. I'm still maintaining the fact that I really like the idea of we have Speak No Evil with the guy's mouth sewn shut, and we
Mm.
have See No Evil with the lady with the blindfold, Aaliyah. So we just need Hear No Evil.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm very interested to know if we're gonna get one of those or if like maybe that's gonna be Everard somehow.
Yeah, we're
Maybe
we're just gonna find a guy with no ears.
he just talks, he doesn't hear you.
Yeah. Much like myself.
Yeah, Pepper.
And hey, I am nothing if not a yapper who also doesn't listen to people.
That's fair. Autumn says Vincent Van Gogh appears. It's very
That's so for real.
good. Graham says, I think Everard is going to intentionally grinner these guys up. I think he chose them for that reason, to receive the honor. I've convinced myself. I'm dedicated to this theory. Graham also said earlier in the chat, I think when I was reading the summary, that the only thing we know about the Blackstone so far is that it turns people into grinners. And I do know that we've read out the description of grinners on the show before, and that grinners are from one of the Call of Cthulhu campaigns that have already been done that are connected a little bit to Malevolent. For clarity, as usual, you don't need to have listened to those games or know anything about those games to enjoy Malevolent. You're perfectly fine not doing that. However, it does provide some interesting and fun supplementary information, kind of like a prologue, or I mean, I wouldn't even call it a prologue. It's just kind of something that you can also listen to. You love Malevolent and want more Malevolent that isn't Malevolent. And I believe that grinners are, from what I remember, very like people boiled down to their base, most violent desires of some kind and have these giant, awful smiles. So not great things. And apparently the Blackstone can turn people into that. Now I'm sure the Blackstone does lots of things. I doubt that's the only thing. Everybody in the chat is saying they are terrifying, and that specifically by everyone. I mean, Yami said they are terrifying, but I think everybody agrees. And then for anybody who is kind of juggling names right now as far as how many people are in the show, we really don't usually have this many people quote unquote on screen at once, so I don't blame you if you're forgetting. I also forget, but right now shockingly we have John, Arthur, and Yorick, we have Langward, we have Friar Holbrook, we have Gerard, we have Barnabas, and see, I always forget one.
Barnabas, Gerard, Langward, and Fryer.
And Everard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in my heart, oh, and Aaliyah. How could I forget the only woman in Malevolent? So I think that we're gonna have a lot to talk about, specifically in the latter half of this episode of Autopsy. There's a lot going on, but I also want to pause to give a brief shout out to a charity that the whole Invictus gang, but primarily Harlan and Joe, are going to be involved with. So I want to shout out Extra Life. So, what is Extra Life? Extra Life is a program of Children's Miracle Network hospitals. Extra Life, basically, Harlan and Joe stay up for 24 hours and play games and do fun stuff with friends and eat hot things, as far as I remember. And they are trying to raise, well, currently the goal is $7,000. Currently, they're sitting at $6,105. It is 6:23 on November 1st for me in that's Pacific time. So for them it is a little after 9 on the 1st. And this starts at midnight on the 2nd for them. They're going to stay up for 24 hours and try to get money for sick kids. So I think that's a great cause. I think that's wonderful. Apparently this is their 8th year doing Extra Life. So far it looks like the community blows it out of the park every year. I'm very excited to be a part of my first one, and if you're listening to this, it's probably long after Extra Life is over, but you can still go and donate at extra-life.org. You can donate to the sick kids anytime, which I think is great. That being said, we also have kind of a special segment coming up later in the show in honor of Extra Life. But before we go into talking about the vote for this week, Peppers, do you have anything left that you wanted to say about this specific chapter?
No, just Barnabas is the MVP, and I expect him to be much more drunk the next time we see him. And I'm praying, and I just want more of that guy. I love that guy.
That's fair.
I
That's fair.
I want him to kill Arthur and take over the show. That's what I want.
Are you? You would sacrifice Arthur for more Barnabas?
Probably not. No, I just
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
He's just my guy, man. He's just my guy. Well, okay, here's the question. Would you kill Arthur to have Noel take his place?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
I'm sorry that Charlie Dowd has taken over my love of pretty much everyone and everything in this podcast, but
that Boston man has captivated you.
I just feel like Arthur has lived a long, healthy, fulfilling life, and
every single one of those things are true. Not a single thing you said was in Arthur's favor. I just wanted to... Yeah, Fish just said he's dying of the plague in all caps.
Well, look, I can say that I would because it's not going to happen, so there's really no risk in me saying yes.
All right, well, now that you said that, it's going to happen. So, Fish's... I believe it was Fish who thinks that Arthur's going to die again. It's now gonna be real because you just said that he's not gonna die. So
okay. If Harlan right now put out a side series all about Charlie and then said, okay, I can update Malevolent or I can update this side series about Charlie, I'd probably ask for the side series about Charlie to be updated. I
think our friendship would be in jeopardy. I think right there. Just putting it out there.
The chat, I want everybody to know who's not in the chat and has no access to the chat, going absolutely wild on me for saying that I would kill Arthur in favor of Charlie content. Yeah. But like, I don't know. There's got to be a character out there that you would say the same about. Don't come for me. Okay, on to the vote. So the poll was give Everard the ring or keep the ring, and pretty much day one we topped this out with give the ring at 12% and keep the ring at 88%. So we're pretty much good on that. We know what we want to do. It's hilariously, Peppers did not have an opinion on this.
I didn't. Yeah, the first time I heard it, I was kind of like, well, I mean, what's worse is, being seen in kind of a bad light right now, or, yeah, keeping the ring and maybe using it for later on. So I guess ultimately, you would lose that token if we went and gave it away now. So I think Queen won me over with like one sentence, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll pick that.
It's funny that like I don't see any advantage to giving the ring other than seeming a little bit rude, and honestly, everyone has way bigger fish to fry than worried about being like social graces. I also think that Everard came in and automatically busted our shit down by calling us a liar, basically, in front of everybody. So there's just like no way that anyone's gonna fall for anything at this point. I don't think it would really benefit us to give over the ring. I also feel like it was kind of a question that was posed out of nowhere. I don't know. Maybe John thought of it because he saw Everard, but I feel like this is almost Harlan going, well, I need a poll. And that's not an insult, but like, I'm sure that's happened plenty before where there's not really a decision to be made here. We just need to move to the next story beat. But he does have to put up a poll every week, so he's got to find something to put up there. And this is one of those things where I'm like, I don't know that it needed to be like, I guess under normal circumstances, I don't know if this would have been a vote, but because we landed where we landed, I think it had to be. It was kind of probably the only available thing. That's my guess. Watch me eat my words, and like 6 months from now, not giving over the ring chalked us up to bullshit.
I mean, ultimately, it does make more sense that, I mean, literally, it's right there, this perfect item to be used to suggest that you're in that cult. For some reason, the name of them have just completely left my mind.
The Order of the Fallen Star?
Yeah, thank you. Order of the Fallen Star. Having a ring that, like, indicates that you're in it and there being a guy right next to you that's in it, like, oh my gosh, you could not ask for like a more perfect way, more perfect in, maybe get easier access into his good graces, and maybe yet one more ally in order to access this Blackstone. It's like right there, so I think ultimately it makes sense to not give up the ring. I just don't like being rude to people. That's always happened every single video game I've ever played it with in my life. I have to be mean to somebody, and that feels bad, unless it's like a racist. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. Specifically, Fish said that we agreed to give Everard the ring as a gift in 47, so it's part of the plan they established. And like, no, I understand it's relevant. I'm not saying it's irrelevant. I'm saying in the story, the way it was, we just got dismissed. Everybody just kind of went to do their own thing. So why would we bring that up now? If I was going to give the guy a gift for being my host, I would do it at a time where it was more appropriate. I'm not saying it's inappropriate. I'm just saying I could think of better times to give him a gift. But I do agree that it's probably best used and saved with Langward, if at all. Like, honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's not a good idea to give it to Langward. We're not being given that option anyway right now, but we'll see. I mean, I don't think it hurts to keep in our pocket. I also know, however, that we are rarely given the opportunity to use. I don't like. We're rarely reading books in this podcast, right? Like we all remember that we still have books that we still have not looked at. I think we've opened a book like twice in the podcast. So I feel like there is a precedent that we get an item or a book or something, and then we end up like not using it or not having the opportunity to use it, or it just doesn't come in handy for a long, long, long time. And I know we feel like we've had the ring for a long time, but we really haven't. So maybe this one needs to cook a little longer.
I just think it's like perfectly right there. It just feels so much like a DM planting. Like if I was leading this game and I gave somebody a ring of the cults that you need to infiltrate, and then 3 months later you meet a cultist who's in that cult, and you have the option to just give it to some rando who, yeah, admittedly is the host that you're staying with right now, and it'd be seen as rude, or give it to the cult. Like, come on, it's right
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah. Well, I think this is a great time to slide into the special next half of our podcast. Usually, for those who are new here, we would spend even more time talking about the vote. We usually try and do a half and half show where we talk about the chapter and then we talk about the vote. But since this poll is so one-sided and Peppers and I agree, and there's not much to say, we have decided to pose a special question in honor of Extra Life. And we have a pinned post in the Discord where you can submit voice messages. And this week, I asked people to submit their voice in regards to a specific question. So I am going to kick that off here.
I can't forget the night I met you. That's all I'm dreaming of.
We're here to talk about what episode of Malevolent gave you an extra life. We have a ton of submissions from people who listened to Autopsy and were very kind and lovely. I would love to share our messages and respond to them. But first, Peppers, what episode of Malevolent gave you an extra life?
oh, I'm so excited to talk about this. So, we have been leading up to this moment for 5 seasons, and it's something I'd been yearning for those full 5 seasons. It is part 43 when John finally verbally tells Arthur that he loves him deeply and that their friendship together has meant so much to John and has led to his growth and is part of his motivation for continuing on. John says first to the witch, "No, my friendship saved me, my connection to this man, my love for Arthur saved me." And then he says at the very end, "I'm entirely my own, I have been and will always be, and when given the choice, I choose hope, and I choose you to be a part of you. Together, we are whole. I think you know that too. Our friendship, it saved us both." And that means, like, everything to me.
I love that, Peppers.
I think a main reason as well, I did get permission from Harlem to share this, but back when we did the Invictus Con, I had some very passionate streams where I was talking about love in terms of friendship and platonic love, and how deeply important platonic love is in relation to romantic love. They are equal. It is not lesser than to love somebody as a friend. And definitely, as someone who is ace, it feels like as important. I always felt that my mental health doesn't decline when I don't have, like, a romantic partner. It does decline when I don't have a friend with me. So it was so important that Arthur and John show this level of friendship, and Harlan shared that he felt encouraged by that very explosive and most likely ineloquent rant of mine. I wish I had put it in more eloquent terms, but the passion was still there. And to then get that confirmation in part 43 was really, like, humbling to me. It was super awesome to have positively impacted it in some way. And so I thought it was awesome. But again, this isn't just about, like, it doesn't matter, you know, what sexuality you are, who you're attracted to. Friendship across the board, across everything, is so, like, deeply meaningful. And you can have just as meaningful as a relationship with your friend as you can a romantic partner. And I've always felt that way. So I really enjoyed that part of our part 43, and that will always stick with me.
I love that, Peppers. That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm ace too. And I deeply resonated with that as well. And I also loved specifically the way that that Arthur said, "And you know I love you too," because my closest friend, my dearest friend in the world, often we tell each other we love each other every day, but it doesn't always occur to him to express that affection in different ways because he's just like, well, it's a given. Like it is. I love you. And I there's not really, I don't always remember that you need to have that reinforced because to me, it's just a fact. It's just an everyday. It's something that comes naturally. And that is very much how it felt coming from Arthur. Kind of I'm happy to say it and I love you. And of course I'll say it again, but it's sort of already known that I love you. And that kind of love I think is so deeply special, and you would be surprised how hard it is to find. So, if you have a friend that you love, you should tell them all the time and every day. Yeah.
And Fish also brings up a great point. What especially gets me is how this has naturally been leading up to the whole podcast. Malevolent is a love story because it is about love in so many ways. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't necessarily have to be a romance story, but it is a love story, and that can be, love isn't just romance. It doesn't mean that romance isn't important. I'm not saying that as well. But friendship, I think that a lot of us yearn for it. And we yearn for a friendship this close and this arduous and this, like, deep. And so I love how Arthur confirms in the next episode that you know that I love you too.
Yeah.
And it's clear that they had this conversation once Arthur was resurrected from death.
Yeah, I guess those near-death experiences.
It really does something to you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, how about you, Queen?
An episode of Malevolent that gave me an extra life. Usually I'm really sappy about this, so I think we're gonna reverse roles. I'm actually gonna say, I mean, there's so many episodes of Malevolent that changed my life fundamentally, but One I want to mention that I've heard all the voice messages and I didn't hear anyone talk about these, so I decided to pick these. The Butcher. All of the chapters that make up the Butcher individually are some of the most intriguing and intellectually exciting pieces of audio I've ever listened to. Every line of dialogue means something. Every part of the story is done in such a perfect and particular way. Like, I as somebody who has been writing since I was very little, I take inspiration not seriously, but like it's very, very, very important to me because inspiration is something that I think people try to capture and struggle with a lot because inspiration is not something you can just command. You can't be like, okay, I need to be inspired. Like I'm just going to go out and do it. You have to sit down and intentionally seek out inspiration or it can find you by surprise, but it's not something we can sell. It's not a product you can manufacture. It is so special, and to be inspired to tell your own story, whatever form that takes, whatever craft you have, is very, very special. And I think one of the most powerful things that we do as humans is tell stories. And we all do it. It's something that makes us different from every other living animal. And I am very passionate about that too. So the butcher, that whole part inspired me so much. Like the way that it's constructed is genuinely just beautiful. The fact that we never really get to hear what Arthur sounds like from a third person point of view in the podcast until that moment was so like I got goosebumps and I still do every time. Like to hear Arthur talking to John but not hearing John is so weird and cool and funny because you're like, oh my God, like that's what people are really hearing. And you don't really get that perspective until that part of Malevolent. It forces you to think about the environment that Arthur inhabits and not just the story that he's living through, and how Arthur is in a real world that he has impact on. And there's just so much there's so much happening in that section that is mind-blowing and beautiful. And also, I joke about it sometimes, and I know I've said it before in text, but like really, Harlan's singing voice is gorgeous. And hearing that more fully in Peggy Gordon is one of the most beautiful. Like, I don't know, I know that if you put my brain under a scanner it would look differently when I'm listening to the butcher. So I love it. It's my favorite part, and it definitely gave me an extra life. It re-motivated me. It inspires me every time I listen to it. It forces you to think differently. It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, and so like very briefly tack on that. He's also able to do it in like a completely different accent. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I am Irish, but it is a convincing Irish accent to sing in, and so to be able to not only sing it but to sing it in the butcher's voice.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be like an extra level of difficult. So to be able to do it so convincingly is very impressive.
Yeah, it's genuinely some of the coolest stuff to listen to. And being part of the spooky streams now live and listening to him just like so effortlessly flow in and out of voices, it's I'm sure that for him it's old hat and he doesn't really think about it, and he's so humble and modest, which is classic for an artist of insane talent to be like, oh, I don't really practice, I don't really know anything, I'm not formally trained, and kind of like brush it off. But dude, that is just some of the coolest stuff ever in the universe to hear him. Just if you're out there and you have not listened to any of the spooky streams, I know it's really tough. Some people have done some like really good compilations of him doing in character stuff. Go listen to that and find moments where he like sidesteps and talks as himself and then almost instantly goes into John or Arthur, or he even does the butcher or Charlie. He does all of these voices and it's just like him sitting there. There's no audio effects, there's no editing. It's just that is a guy who is doing all those people. It's crazy to listen to. So the magnitude of Harlan's talent is insane. If I think about it too hard, I go a little crazy. So let's, enough of Peppers and I talking. This podcast was made to showcase a bunch of voices and talent. So I'm going to let a couple of people tell us what gave them an extra life.
Hello, Valentine here. Pronouns are they, them. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about part 31 of Malevolent, The Nightmare, as an episode of Malevolent that I just made me feel very seen. In one of the nightmare sequences or flashback sequences, Arthur is having this conversation about his romantic, or I guess lack of romantic feelings towards Bella, and he confides in this guy, James. He tells him that he cannot live for someone else. Hearing Arthur echo this sentiment just, I feel like really echoed what myself and so many other people on the aromantic spectrum experience and feel. And I'm so grateful for not just Malevolent as a podcast, but also the fandom space of Malevolent for being such a wonderful representation of platonic relationships and platonic intimacy and the importance of relationships without a romantic connotation with them. I'm so grateful to continue to see representations of Arrow, Arthur Lester in fandom spaces, as well as queer platonic John and Arthur. They just have my heart. And yeah, I'm very grateful for this show and the fandom space for the representation.
Hi, I'm Faye. I'm going to be probably one of the 200 people talking about part 26, The Bedrock. So this part was dropping as I joined Patreon. I remember the bit where Arthur has his breakdown, dropped like a week after I joined, and afterwards I was just sitting in my office, staring into space, feeling the full spectrum of human emotions. So my favorite through line of Malevolent is just this idea of even if you fucked up big, your mistakes are part of you, but they don't define you. You can move forward, you can be better, and you deserve healing and you deserve love. And that's something I struggle with for myself, so having it here means the world to me. And John and Arthur's conversation just encapsulates that so perfectly. Like John with Arthur at his lowest moment, showing him so much care and compassion and basically saying, like, you are more than your worst moments and it's not over for you and we can go forward together. Like the line, I will not let you drown, just did things to my heart, I think. It fundamentally rewrote me as a person. This episode fundamentally rewrote me as a person. Two more things. Thing one, Parker. I love Parker. I love what we know from this part about Arthur and Parker's backstory. I love Arthur smiling as he says Parker was so nosy. I have never met this guy and I miss him so much. Thing two, my favorite extra life memory is in 2022, Harlan and Joe saying happy birthday to me and I cried happy tears. It was wonderful. This was a mess. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you to Valentine and Faye for their submissions. I was very torn on what episode to submit, and The Nightmare was definitely one of them. So I was very glad to hear that it got shouted out.
I absolutely agree with both sentiments, Valentine. I'm sure, so many people have already confirmed that they're in the A spectrum, and so being able to listen to Malevolent is so, validating. And I think a lot of what Arthur speaks on, even if he's not necessarily canonically ace or anything like that, I think a lot of us still relate to a lot of the problems that he's had, which is marrying someone that you don't really love. And to those of us who've been in past relationships and not knowing who we are yet, and having the discussion maybe a lot later in life and realizing that you just didn't love them. You liked them, but the love you kind of try to force. And so I completely understand that. And with Faye, I was with you. I was on the floor over part 26. That was the one and only episode where I've straight up sat down on the ground. I was like doing chores or something, and I just remember sitting down on the ground to give it my full attention to listen. Such a beautiful performance, and I completely agree.
I think we are ready to move on to the next one.
Hello, this is Yamikaku, any pronoun, and I am going to talk about Bedrock, because it might be that one particular chapter, of course, might be the single best piece of audio drama I have ever heard. And of course, it's the chapter where Arthur kills Uncle and has his cathartic breakdown where he comes to terms with the fact that he wants to die because of what happened to Thoreau. And Harlan just, oh my God, the fact that he did that all in one take still blows my mind. But considering the fact that I was one of the people that said I didn't want to kill Uncle, I'm very glad that I was on the losing side and that he was able to do this, because it gave us that absolutely beautiful scene, and it leads into John reciting my favorite Frost poem. And I was just screaming on the Discord where Arthur's doing the, the wolves are meant to be out there, Larson. And I was like, buddy, who you talking to? You're not talking to Uncle. You're projecting. And then John just softly stating, miles to go before we sleep, and that they're not done. And it's just, that's my favorite chapter of the whole entire podcast. I mean, 26 in general is just beautiful, but that single chapter, just, I think about that on a daily basis. I've listened to that chapter so often. Thanks, guys.
Hey, this is Fish. I use he, him pronouns, and I think that episode 43 is really important to me and to a lot of people for many different reasons. Mostly on John's themes of identity, I found myself really, really understanding where he's coming from in that regard. The fact that he has to defend his identity against this oppressive person, this force that is trying to tell him that he can only be this one thing. He can't really decide to change and choose something for himself that he finds more validating and affirming. As a trans person, I know that that is something that I can really heavily see myself in and empathize with him on that. And I've always really kind of had that vibe, been connecting with John as a character through that lens ever since I started listening. And something about having that really fully explained and delved into in such a open and honest way in the episode, and then getting that confirmation that, like, yeah, that was the idea behind it. It made me feel really, really good, and I felt very kind of emotional, and it was definitely something that I would say kind of helped me personally feel pretty good about myself too,
Thank you to Yami and Fish for submitting.
I love how everybody feels so validated throughout these. I love how so many different people of so many different experiences can hear themselves and feel themselves in these podcasts. I think that's awesome, and it shows that a community can form through it with all these different kinds of people having these shared experiences.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really cool to see how many people who have felt invalidated, have felt misplaced, can really come together over something like Malevolent. It just shows you how we really have a lot more in common than we ever don't. I mean, there's so much that is the same about our experiences that there's really no reason we need to be so divided as a general idea. I think this community is very united. It's not a personal commentary. It's more about the human journey, but I love hearing how passionately everybody feels about their specific special moment with Malevolent, and I think it's awesome that we can have so much in common with each other, and we can see through all of these different lenses, and together it all still aligns with what Malevolent is, which is all about hope, which is really all that I think anyone wants. Hope that life is going to be better, that we can make it better, that things are destined to get better, and no matter how dark it seems. And I know that right now, sometimes things can feel extra difficult. I know that that's been said a lot in the last 4 years, but it will, I definitely believe, be a better place if we all continue to unite and bond over these shared experiences. Autumn says, God, I've just thought about how I want to talk about Arthur's blindness and how it makes me feel, because I don't see blind characters very often, so it's nice to be represented. Oh, Autumn. Well, that's okay that you didn't submit, but you can always submit anytime, and we are happy to play your voice, and we will always make sure that it's appropriate for the show. We're not gonna put a really touching voice message in a really silly episode or anything, but there's plenty of space for everybody to be heard and seen and validated, and we would love to hear you. So if you ever want to submit, just throw it in there and I will find a time to toss it at you, and I will ping you if you want to be pinged, and you can come in and share your experience. I would love to hear about it. Okay, I think we will move into the next one.
My name is Lambda. I use he, him pronouns. Part 40 meant a whole lot to me as a voting patron. We get votes sometimes that are essentially asking us if we want to continue the path we're on or give up. And in part 40, we had the vote to either go willingly or not. My gut instinct in these situations is to throw in the towel. Arthur's surrounded, the butcher has a gun on him. What could we possibly do other than comply and hope to live long enough for an opportunity to escape? I couldn't see past the risk that was posed to Arthur and Charlie, but thankfully I lost that vote and we chose to keep Arthur's head unbowed even if it got bloody. And we got that amazing moment of the butcher being on our side. Later on, when Charlie is under the mind control of the king, he tells Arthur he's too tired to fight anymore, but Arthur screams for him to keep fighting. It made me cry in that moment as I thought about everything that Arthur had been through and how after everything that has happened to him, he still chooses to fight back, a lesson that I try to take forward with me.
Hi, my name is Rotten Little Flea, or Flea for short. I use she, her pronouns. And my favourite part of Malevolent that gave me extra life technically isn't a part. It's actually the vote for 234. That was my first experience with the Malevolent community, my first proper vote. And when I actually joined the Discord properly, and I had such a fun time doing it that now you're basically stuck with me, and I really won't be going anywhere anytime soon. And I really look forward to debating more in the future and just generally hanging out in the Discord because it's so much fun and I really love you guys.
Thank you, Lambda and Rotten Little Flea, or Flea for short, for submitting. I appreciate it.
Once again, I kind of feel like a broken record how much I agree with everybody. Lambda, I do love the lesson that we learn, which is, to keep going with your head unbowed, keep moving forward. And sometimes, it seems like such a simple message, but when you're living life and I think when things are thrown your way and you're really upset and you don't really want to accept it, well, you have to in order to keep going. And so I find it very valuable. Part 40, all these different decisions that Arthur makes that you kind of learn through him. Yeah, even though Cain exploded Butcher's head, and I cried a little bit over it. And I was really mad at Cain, and I was like, I don't want to follow you. I think ultimately it's kind of a lesson learned of, hey, even though you're not terribly happy with the situation that you're in, you gotta keep going anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all have those moments of hopelessness and being down and not really having the insider perspective or energy, I think, to see where hope falls in. And that's when we really have to lean on the people around us for that strength and that hope. And I think that was a great example of that. And Rotten Little Flea, it is such a pleasure to have you. You have been such a bright light in the Discord. I love having you debate in the polls with me. It's been such a joy. I love having newer members of the community who are willing to share their voice, quite literally, but also figuratively, and who are willing to jump in both feet first and just embrace the chaos. I know that our Discord could be a little bit overwhelming because everyone is genuinely so eager to help that it can feel kind of like you're being attacked by helpfulness. And I say that in the most loving way as somebody who also does that. But the experience of joining the Discord for the first time, if you have a question, you won't just get an answer. You'll get it answered 5 times by 5 different people, all giving you the same answer in various helpful ways. So it's a lot, but I love hearing that you feel welcomed, and you are very loved here. We love to have you, and interacting with you has been a treat and a pleasure. So thank you, and thank you for submitting again. I know it takes a lot of courage, especially since you haven't been here very long, and I appreciate it. Okay, I think we will move into the next one.
Hello, my name is Graham, and my pronouns are he, him. The episode that gave me an extra life, as it were, is part 43. And while I could talk about the trans allegory part of that episode for forever, I actually wanted to talk about a different part of that episode today. I'm gonna paraphrase some of the thoughts I wrote out when it first came out. I am someone who has struggled for a long time with an often compulsive need to be a good person, and it's made me miserable. Being autistic and the black and white morality that comes with that really doesn't help, because it's impossible to be 100% good all the time. It's impossible to be 100% good in everyone's eyes. Good and evil are subjective. Everyone contains multitudes. I contain multitudes. There was something very healing about hearing John call himself both. The fact that I can be mean or selfish or petty, it doesn't make me unworthy of love, and it doesn't make John unworthy of love. When we fuck up, we still have to take accountability for it, and I still want to strive to be a better person, but I am allowed to be complicated. I'm allowed to be messy. And hearing John acknowledge that about himself out loud felt like confirmation that I am allowed to acknowledge it about me as well. I haven't even murdered anyone, so... I don't know if I completely agree with John's outlook on life, but that's okay. I don't need to. It's his own, and that's all it needs to be.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you so much for submitting. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Another thing I've heard as well is people who are, is it called on the autism spectrum? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
They'll listen in with John and they feel very connected to John. And I think that's great. I think that's awesome. Slay girly pop / gender neutral. That's what I have to say when I want to relate, but I can't.
I love you. That's great. Okay.
Hi, this is Vol Control. My pronouns are he, him, and the episode of Malevolent that gives me extra life is part 39, The Detective. I could talk about part 20 or part 40 or Coda or Intermezzo, all of which are incredible, but there's a line in part 39 that lives in my brain rent-free. I was asking John. Gets me choked up with a huge smile on my face every time, and I can't stop grinning like an idiot through the whole conversation. This episode's got everything. It's got the elevator scene, Arthur going apeshit, reciting the end of the story to Percival, Marie's heartfelt story about her son, Oscar letter, and it's got Charlie lore. Charlie seems like this unflappable detective, so cool and composed, which makes those moments of vulnerability when he talks about the King in Yellow and the Dreamlands pack such a punch. It's the timing, both in this part and the series as a whole, that makes these emotional beats have such impact. John's personhood and ability to interact with the world outside of Arthur's head means so much to me. This part is such a beautiful counterbalance of John's jealousy arc with Oscar, true compromise that shows how much Arthur and John have grown to trust and understand each other. I just love it. And really, Harlan's skill as a storyteller with emotional arcs and dramatic arcs just inspires the heck out of me.
I was talking to John. I love Charlie. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
I love the agency that Noel gives to John in that moment. I love John's expression, vocal expression, I guess, when he's acknowledged for the first time as like a person outside of Arthur. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and this is like outside of Arthur, this is John's first friend.
Yeah.
And this is showing that somebody outside of Arthur cares about him, hasn't even interacted with John, hasn't even heard John, and yet cares about what John has to say and think and feel. And it's a beautiful moment that kind of breaks John out of this sense of almost like spiraling tunnel of just talking to Arthur, nobody else, and I can completely understand how isolating that would feel, and suddenly it's broken away by Noel just asking, or just kind of sort of saying that sort of demanding question of, I want to know what John has to say, not Arthur.
Yeah, because it's very important to distinguish John as a whole separate person with his separate identity, thoughts, feelings, opinions. Man, it's so good. It's so good. This is This is why we stand Charlie down. Sorry. I have a lot of very strong feelings about this. So we're going to get into the last couple of messages, and I will just full disclosure, they got some special privilege. They were allowed to go over the 90-second mark. You'll understand why once I play them. But
it's me in a coat. It's me with a little mustache. I got to speak twice.
We're gonna play this first one, and then I'm actually gonna stop after this first one because the last one is significant in a way that I think deserves its own time.
In 2023, before Extra Life, Liz reached out to me. She had a plot that was a full year in the making, which was that she wanted to buy a whole skit during Extra Life, which if people don't know is $1,000. She'd saved money from every paycheck for months to make this happen, so when I say it was a scheme a year in the making, it really was. But then she thought, how do I make dropping 1K even more chaotic? She'd intended to wait for a slow point in the god-awful early hours of the morning to spring it on them, to which I said I hoped I'd be awake. Liz came back to me with the idea that I should be the one to hold the launch codes, if you will, for the big donation. So then we had to think of a suitably theatrical way to do this, and Liz came up with the brilliant idea. Knowing her, Harlan, and me all love Star Trek TNG, she suggested I should at Liz and say, make it so. To which I said, not theatrical enough. I should write a script, and throughout the night we can have some Captain and Number One banter to build suspense. Which turned into me writing a Trek mini-episode featuring the USS Invictus. The plan was for me to post a bit, Liz to post a bit, back and forth. We fully thought Harlan and Joe might acknowledge our shenanigans, but we should have known no plan survives engagement with the Guthries. So they start reading the whole thing out loud, and since I didn't write it to be read out loud, I immediately panicked. Liz got to watch me live write in the Google Doc. I'm frantically rewriting, writing new material. Liz is cackling in the DMs. It's chaos. And then we pull the trigger on the final donation. Liz drops the 1K. I wrote a big Trekkian speech about hope and community to go along with it. Harlan was speechless. Joe was crying. Everyone was freaking out. It was great. And what happened after that? Well, the very next day, Liz and I started planning our scheme for the next year, which is now this year, 2024. And the scheme this year is excellent, if I do say so myself.
Thank you, Ren. I loved hearing that story because I've never heard it before. I've never read it before. I've never seen the big drop. I will have to go and find it because that sounds delightful. But it does sound like it was very much played out over the course of several hours. So that's incredible. I love that.
Yeah, I'm super excited, Ren. I'm a little scared because I know I'm gonna fall asleep probably tonight at probably 3 a.m. So if you do that, and if you do it at 3 a.m., I'm gonna be so mad at you.
Yeah, I love that story, Ren. Thank you for sharing it with us. I think there's a lot of newer patrons and fans of Malevolent and Extra Life that have not heard it, and so I very much appreciate the quick summary. And I am awed and inspired, and you are ever the mentor, and I aim to one day carry on your legacy, as impossible as that might be. I love that. It's beautiful. Thank you. I'm gonna play this next one, and we're all just gonna sit and enjoy.
Hi, Peppers and Queen. Hi, everybody. It's Joe. I just wanted to call in and share one of my favorite moments of Malevolent, a moment that gave me an extra life. I'm a little bit nervous to talk about it because of how important this scene is to me and how much it really spoke to me, but here it goes. I guess, as everyone all knows, Malevolent is way more than just a scary podcast. Its emotional depth is one of the things that makes it so special. And this part always stops me in my tracks. It's part 39, The Detective, where Arthur returns to Marie's apartment after everything that happened at the farmhouse and chopping off Oscar's arm, and where he saved Marie's sister Hattie. So Marie is really grateful for Arthur's help as a private investigator, and she offers to pay him in a locket. Of course, everything that Harlan does with Marie's voice is really astonishing because of how well he mimics an old lady's voice, but also how much he's able to convey with the acting. So that's really gorgeous, but that's not the most important thing to me. It's how we really come to understand Marie's character. She shows us a lot more facets of her personality, and she becomes really vulnerable in this scene. I'm getting worked up just thinking about it. She admits that there is nobody that she can give the locket to, that she doesn't have any descendants, I guess, because her son has passed away. He died in the war. And she takes this opportunity with Arthur's company to reminisce a little bit about her son. She mentions a couple of times that her son wanted her to be a different person, a better person, a softer, maybe she says more neighborly, but I think that he's trying to say more loving. And it speaks to the relationship I think that a lot of children have with their parents, where they, when they become adults, look at the people that their parents are, and it's no longer through the lens of childhood, where you see your parents as just people. And I think Marie expresses a little bit of regret or maybe defensiveness over her own personality. She said that her son was different than her, was softer. And as a mother myself, I can really relate, because you always wish the best for your children, but also you hope that they can become better people than you, that you can teach them to grow beyond who you are. And then, of course, she talks about missing her son, and the part that always makes me cry is when she talks about the sun, about the sunlight in the room, and how she sometimes feels him there in the warmth. And I think about how early in the 20th century, I guess, I don't know the prevalence of indoor heating, but it would feel similar, the warmth of a sunbeam and holding a child. And how much that must have meant to Arthur to hear about, considering his own personal history with Thoreau. Excuse me. And then I think also, Marie's story really illustrates some of my own personal fears about growing old and being alone. But that in the end, she asks Arthur for companionship, although she's a little bit ashamed or maybe afraid, and he eagerly offers it, and we're left with hope in the end, and that's what makes Malevolent so special. Because even when there is fear and sadness and desperation, that there's always hope.
So thanks, Joe, for thank you, Joe, for submitting. It was really kind of you to take the time out of your probably very busy day and submit. I really appreciate it. It was very, very special.
Joe, I love the fact, because it never, I think especially as you get older and as you mature and start to heal from, maybe as you get older and you're just like, I want to live on my own, I want to live away from my parents. I'm definitely living that life at the moment of stomping my feet and being like, well, I'm gonna be independent. And as time goes on, you have these phone calls with your mom, and she wants to have longer phone calls with me because she misses me, and she wants to see me. We'll do video chats instead of just phone calls because she wants to see my face because she misses me, and she'll share her fears, and she'll share her traumas that she has had in life. And it's so honest, and it's so, as you get older and you kind of lose some of that anger that, either justified or not, you miss your parents, you love your parents, and you see them as just people and not these like dictators in your life of, well, they're gonna do this and that and they're gonna force me to not have fun anymore. and instead you see them as people who were trying their best. And especially in Marie, I remember when Marie looked at Arthur, I think it was their first meeting, when she sees him in the light, and it's kind of beaming past Arthur's head, and she can see Arthur in the sunlight, and he reminds her of her own son, which is why she says, "Oh, you've seen some action," because it reminds her of her son who passed away, during the war. Devastating, devastating, devastating. But it's something I love is the fact that they both decide to spend time with each other, and they go off into this room and you don't hear their conversation. It feels like this moment of privacy and intimacy in a way that feels very much like mother and son, kind of living surrogate mother and son. Or it could be two parents who have lost their children and who are sharing in that trauma. I don't think Arthur would divulge that to Marie, or maybe he would, I don't know. But it's the fact that they're sharing in each other's company. And I think that's what has Malevolent standing out more to me than any other podcast that I've listened to, is it does so well with handling emotions, where at the end of the day, I don't feel awful after listening to it. I feel happier at the end of listening to a season or such, or what I would consider to be a character arc. I love the way that Malevolent handles these emotions, and yeah, it's incredible. And thank you so much, Joe, for sharing that.
Yeah, I won't go on too long, but like a lot of people, I'm sure, I have parental issues. I actually still live with my family. I've been moved in and out of different sections of it for a long time. I've never lived on my own. Economically, it just isn't feasible where I am right now. But I currently actually share a room with my grandmother, and we are extremely, extremely close. I've been at her side since my grandfather died, who I was also really close to, and so everything about Marie pretty much choked me up. But specifically when Joe was talking about how you sometimes kids want their parents to be different people, that's really something that I relate to, because I have always wanted a different relationship with my mother and close family than I have ever been able to have. They are just not capable of what I need as their child, and as I've gotten older, I am able to understand that and deal with that in a healthier way. But I think as adults, even when you can separate yourself from that idea, it doesn't go away. You never stop wanting things that your parents may not be able to give you. And it gets easier to deal with, but it is a form of grief. It's a form of grief to have a parent who cannot support you in the way you deserve to be supported. And I think that when I heard Marie talking about how she would always get on her son for being dirty and rambunctious, and how he would just have been so happy, I just think about the strong opposition in how I operate within my family and how different we are, but how much I still love and care about them, no matter how much we're different. And there are just some relationships, like I've said before, between John and Arthur, you just don't know until you're in them. And I think it's a good reminder not to judge anybody for how they may still love and care for their family, even though their family may not be able to support them at that time. But I think it's Marie's whole arc is beautiful, and I do think it's an arc for Marie. It's far more focused on Arthur, but we get to explore her and her character, and I love that section. I think it is highly underrepresented and underloved. People don't talk about it as much as they do, for example, Bedrock, but It's a great part. So thank you, Joe, for sharing everything. Sorry for crying on mic. I thought I would be stronger than that. But I'm a weenie. And that is actually, yes, Joe started it. She's in the chat. Joe started it. In case you don't know, I probably should have led with this. In case you don't know and you're new to Malevolent, listening to this in the future, Joe Guthrie is Harlan Guthrie's wife. So creator's wife came and submitted to podcast, which is very exciting and cool and special, and we're very happy. Thank you, Joe. Joe has occasionally popped in and listened to Autopsy Live, which is also extremely special, and we're very grateful.
And
Yeah.
I'll just add in, Joe is absolutely an integral part of this community. Joe also hosts Dice Shame, which is a D&D podcast that Joe hosts with, I'm so sorry, I can't remember everybody's name.
It's okay.
With multiple people. And it's great, and Joe is a fantastic DM. If you're at all interested in a D&D show, it's absolutely fantastic. But even outside of Dice Shame, Joe has consistently been an absolute rock to this community. Consistently creative and wise and gentle and just an incredible lady. So
Yeah.
we love you, Joe, not platonically. Or I'm sorry, no, not what I meant. Not what I meant. I said that wrong. No. I meant not.
Oh, sweet Peppers. This is not even the first time this has happened to Peppers.
That's not what I meant. Not parasocially. That's what I meant. Joe, please. That's not what I meant. That was an accident. I meant not parasocially.
We needed that.
Not parasocially. I have nothing to confess. Nothing's been changed. Joe, you're great as like a person. I hope you don't take any offense that I don't see you that way. Not parasocially.
Oh my god, Joe.
Yeah. Anyway, you're cool. I'm gonna shut up now.
Poor Peppers. Joe, we love you. I genuinely think you have one of the most gorgeous voices in the universe. You're always so beautiful when we see you on camera. I am so excited to celebrate Extra Life with you and donate a bunch. Everyone should be able to share about Extra Life, even if they cannot donate financially. That is totally okay. There's no shame, no guilt. But please go visit links. I think it is still extra-life.org, I want to say. Yes, extra.life/org is the main website, but the Invictus Discord will have specific links that you can donate through the Guthrie's Extra Life campaign, and that would probably be the best. Also, any merch links that I send or share that go to bonfire.com, some of the proceeds from any shirts that I make on that website, like the #BoyLife shirt, there's also a hashtag Charlie, or there's a Charlie Dowd is Alive shirt that I made. There's a collaboration shirt with Rotten Little Flea, who made a design that says #BoyExtraLife. All of those are for sale on Bonfire, and the merch links are in the merch link Discord chat, and some of those proceeds go to the same charity that Extra Life works with, Children's Miracle Network Hospital. Even though the Guthries won't see that and they don't know about it, they're not involved with that at all, I will just let you know that you can feel good about that purchase if you decide to make one. Anyway, hopefully that gave you some time to recover, Peppers. I am excited.
Yeah, definitely.
I am so excited to see you guys really soon for Extra Life. It is in, let's see, 7:30, 8:30. So it's in like an hour and a half, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's our little special to y'all.
Wow. So yeah, everyone nap, hydrate. Well, Peppers, I do have to say, I am excited to spend my first Extra Life with you. Speaking of friends that we should tell nice things to all the time, I do love you. I love working with you. I have become a better, bigger, different person because of knowing you. You are wonderful, and I care a lot about you.
Aww. I've told Queen this multiple times. Strangely enough, as somebody who, values platonic love so deeply, I have a really, really hard time saying I love you to my friends. And thankfully, Queen makes it very easy to say. So, Queen, I love you as well. I deeply appreciate you. I appreciate your wisdom. I appreciate how much work you put into this podcast. It genuinely would not have happened without you. You are one of the hardest workers I know, who is so passionate about this community, more passionate than I've seen anyone really. And the fact that you care so much about this community to host a bunch of games and different events and to keep everybody closely connected, it's awesome. So you're pretty cool, I guess.
Oh, Peppers. All right. Well, let's go take a nap in preparation for Extra Life, or hydrate, or eat, or take meds.
Yeah, do that, because I forgot. So, yeah.
Oh, friends.
Let's do that.
All right. All right. The horrors persist.
Is it yet? But so what? Which one do I say? You say it wrong, and so do we. And then if you say, but it's actually supposed to be but. So do we. That's all they want to hear anyway.
No, Peppers. Okay, listen. The reason why it's but so do we is because in spite of all the horrible, awful things that are happening, we're gonna persist. We're gonna get through this bloody button bout.
But if you say and so do we, it sounds funnier because then we are also part of the horrors, so it's funny. I want it to be a threat.
That's the
so
difference
just letting you all
between
know.
you and I.
And
I
so do
want
we.
this to
So
be a
watch
touching
out.